civilmedia.mk. Slobodno, nezavisno, otvoreno.
Where to find the solution, which is the best approach we can adopt to tackle the problem of the influence of new technologies in our societies, and more specifically to the problem of the huge disinformation spread. I'm now more interested, although I have worked a lot in media policy issues and the regulation, I'm more interested on the demand side, on the reasons why audience actually demands for or is receptive to disinformation, to fake news, and so on and so on. There haven't been much studies in our country on these issues. 3 years ago, there was a study commissioned by the regulator, if you remember, a huge survey on the individual levels of media literacy in the country. There are also some other studies that just grasp the issue, the reasons why audience in our country, more specifically, behave or is so much receptive to disinformation, but mainly the knowledge that is achieved in research, in social research in other countries is also explains actually the reasons why the audience behave like this. It is a fact that social media in our countries as well is becoming the main way of accessing news, especially for the younger generations. It is also known that social media continues to contribute to the increasing distribution of user-generated information, which includes false claims, fabricated news, disinformation, conspiracy theories, hate speech, and so on and so on. But before I move to the main points of my discussion, where to find the solution of the problem, let's not forget that this wealth of information and digital news outlets has revolutionized and democratized the politics. The public can scrutinize what politicians are doing in real time and comment on it almost instantly via social networks. So let's not forget the positive aspect of the problem. We are repeating now because we are facing the problem of spread of disinformation and the negative influence this phenomena reflects in our societies. So what's the problem here? The answer seems straightforward. The digital disinformation is a huge problem because for most of the people, it is not easy at all to distinguish credible news from disinformation, fake news or manipulation on social media. So that is the core of the problem. Why people cannot recognize what is credible news, what is disinformation. But the solution of the problem is not straightforward. We can easily describe the problem, but the solution is not simple. Which approach is best one? Whether to apply restrictive or positive measures, whether to ban some content or to work on raising the awareness of the population. So both approaches have their advantages and disadvantages. For example, legislation banning disinformation and fake news may infringe upon individual rights and freedom of speech. And on top of this, online information is extremely hard to regulate because it spreads like wildfire on social media. So it is not a simple solution just to adopt restrictive measures in the regulation. On the other side, campaigns and short-term educational programs can only partially make changes in the awareness and skills of the population to recognize this disinformation. probably the best solution would be to combine both approaches, to be extremely careful in introducing restrictive measures, but at the same time to implement thorough and long-term interventions in other societal areas, like, for example, the education system, formal education system, then self-regulation, strengthening the role of the family, the professionalization of the media, the role of the civil society sector. So I think that in our countries, actually, what has been achieved so far is more on the side on the civil society sector and on running a comprehensive media literacy campaign than on engaging in a thorough reforms of the formal education system. And that is the problem we are facing now. So we know that media information literacy has become a critical skill since the appearance of the notions of fake news and later disinformation in the public discourse. Today, everyone talks about media information literacy as part of the solution. This is a kind of basic prerequisite to identify, select, understand, and use trustworthy information and to participate in the public discussion. However, my argument here is that media and information literacy cannot be the solution for the problem of the disrupted public discourse if its focus is not on developing critical thinking skills among the population. And this is a very complex and slow process that can only be achieved through a carefully designed reform of the formal education process at all levels. In our country, for example, there have been a huge number of educational programs, awareness-raising campaigns, and various other initiatives. And there are also announcements that media information literacy will be introduced in the formal education system in the beginning of September this year. But my dilemma is, how will these reforms be implemented? Will they be implemented thoroughly based on the scientific evidence gained so far on how through the learning process the individual can adopt a critical, or even better to say scientific way of reasoning, or they will be implemented in a way that only few thematic units in media literacy will be introduced within some social science subjects within the formal education. So I think that the biggest problem with our education today is that it doesn't teach students to think critically. Although there is a widespread consensus regarding what skills constitute critical thinking, as well as substantial research on how those skills can be taught successfully within the formal education process. I don't think that this knowledge has been taken into account while designing the reforms, at least in our country. I don't know what is the situation in other countries in the region. And I'm not optimistic that the solution will be visible soon for that reason.
civilmedia.mk. Slobodno, nezavisno, otvoreno.